Hi, welcome to the channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. It's been a while since we have made my last video, and as you can see, some changes has occurred. I've invited my beautiful daughter to come and join me, and hopefully we can discuss various subjects that would be of interest of you and make the show a little bit more non-bland or more exciting if you can describe it like that. In any case, my daughter's name is Heike, and today is Wednesday, the 26th of June, 2023, and our topic is the events of last weekend. So,
Hello everyone. Okay, so today is the 28th, but yeah, okay. On Friday, the Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin called for Vladimir Putin to remove General Sigoyo and Gerasimov during an attempted coup d'etat against the Russian government for alleged corruption. After Belarusian Prime Minister Lukashenko struck a deal with the mercenary group leader, the so-called mutiny was called off. Would you please elaborate on these events that took place and where we currently stand today?
okay. Basically, what happened is that there was a so-called alleged artillery or missile attack on the camp of where the Wagner group were resting. And there was even a video showed that where some of the troops were moving through the forest, and they come to a clearing, and then you can see that some of the branches and trees have been damaged by typically shrapnel and so on. But then there were two small fires that would look like pilot fires for campfires, and the ground was green. There was no fire marks on the grass or the plantations, and there were no open spaces similar to the tree. So the whole scene looked a little bit suspicious, and I don't believe that was an attack on the Wagner group. Also, Prigozhin alleged that some of his troops were killed, and basically then he called for the removal of Sugoi and Gerasimov, and accused them, as he has done before, for corruption, incompetence, and a lot of other names, which we don't want to go and repeat. And, well, that is what happened more or less on Friday, where the whole event started. After that, one must just remember that the Wagner group has been fighting in Bakhmut for a while, for actually about 10 months. And after they conquered to Bakhmut, they moved with their whole equipment and troops back to the rear at Rostock, where there was a military camp.
Yeah.
No, that's a city.
Oh, sorry.
Rostock area, and for R&R type of resting, regrouping, retraining, and stuff like that. So none of the Wagner groups were really on the front. So whatever happened, there were some accusations that yes, it left a gap for the Ukrainians to exploit on the front line due to some of the troops being removed, but that is not true. When the Wagner group went to the rear, they were replaced by ordinary professional Russian soldiers. And our fault. So that is more or less what we heard, and it was a shock. And then we heard that the Prigozhin has ordered some of his troops to enter Rostock-on-Don, which is a fair-sized city, and they surrounded the headquarters of the military defense, no? And basically occupied those buildings. But then again, a video came out where he was talking to two of the senior generals in that building who were in charge. And it sounded they were drinking coffee and they had a casual talk and so on. So I didn't see any animosity or aggressiveness on the side of the Gerasimov himself, because he was sitting there. I also didn't, there were a lot of videos about the troops entering the city, but None of them were violent. No real shots were fired except for maybe into the air. The population greeted them. There was no fear, basically, that they had for the troops. And I believe a lot of people actually didn't know what was happening. And I believe also a lot of the Wagner troops didn't know what was happening. But then Prigozhin made another claims that Sugoi and Gerasimov must be removed from command. And well, that is more or less where we had it on Friday. We stopped on Friday.
What were some of the claims that Prigozhin made?
Well, Prigozhin has now for a long time been complaining, and usually on social media and on in the media itself. Now, one can understand that Prigozhin is a private person. It's a private contracted military that is organizing. But even in a country like Russia, the stuff that he has said in previous videos and so on were quite severe, and he always accused Sugoi and Gerasimov and some of the other generals from incompetence. And his main grub was actually that he wasn't supplied enough ammunition and artillery rounds and stuff like that. And it actually came to a head about a month ago when they had nearly conquered Bakhmut. And there was one video where he showed to the media a couple of about 30 Wagner group died soldiers. And he was going off and was very angry. And he said he doesn't get enough ammunition. And if he had gotten enough ammunition, these guys wouldn't have died and so on. So you can see he was really upset. And I can understand that. I mean, I'm sure that he knew some of these guys personally. And no leader wants to lose his own people. But I think he misinterpreted the facts, especially also the facts of war. He is a civilian. He has no military training per se. He hasn't got that much experience in the form of acknowledging death and losses and injuries and stuff like that. So, and they were fighting for more than 10 months. And Prigozhin was a person that didn't sit back in the office. He was always on the front supporting his people. Although he didn't make the military decisions or tactical or strategic decisions, he was still involved in that. So I'm sure that the pressure got onto him. It was a fierce battle in Bakhmut. He later made accusations that, not accusations, but made known about how many losses he had. And at that stage, he said they had about 10,000 of the ex-convicts that died and a similar number of the volunteers. And that brought the estimated death to about 20,000. But he said that the Ukrainians suffered about 70,000. Now, I believe those numbers are a little bit high. Those numbers were then later reviewed and readjusted by somebody else. And that were much more in the region of 7,500 soldiers of the Wagner group, which was much more credible. Also, if you do that, then the ratio of 1 to 10, which is a general accusation that the Russian military always, and pro-Russian commentators are calling, is that from various sources, the kill ratio between Russians and Ukrainians is about 1 to 10. So that brings it also in context. But the other one is, going back to the last one, is that he accused him of a lack of artillery rounds and ammunition. But then a week later, he published some papers of his calculations on why he said that. And I went through those papers, and it was a little bit ridiculous on what he wanted. He again referred to the standard type of textbook artillery rounds that he needed and so on. And I think I remember correctly, it was like 6,000 rounds, artillery rounds per day. And it translates into 72,000 in 2 weeks and like 500,000 in a month and so on. And I don't believe in that. So I think his claims were a little bit off base. But being a private, that is basically what I would expect from him. And even for a group like him, which was sort of estimated at 50,000 men, which I also debate about. I think he has a lot less, maybe 20,000. Then distributing that kind of ammunition to him and his section alone is a little bit high. So his demands were unreasonable at that stage.
Do you think that the Russian government and Vladimir Putin were hesitant to supply him with weaponry in the previous months because they sort of expected something like this?
No, I don't think they hesitantly made it or intentionally starved him of ammunition. The Wagner group were doing a hell of a job in Bakhmut. I didn't agree with the tactics because it was supposed to be a meat grinder where the Ukrainians are being dying. But the Wagner group were actually moving forward, trying to capture the city and Soledar as well, and then expose their own soldiers into danger. And that sort of contradicted the idea of having a meat grinder. But that's only a personal view. And whether it really happened, well, that is my speculations. But looking at all the facts, that's more or less what I come from, what I can see. Usually in an army of that size, an operation of that size, there is always a shortage of ammunition, logistical problems, transport problems. It's a nightmare. And the Russians were known to have a high usage of artillery rounds, but not only 152 millimeter, like all calibers, which is a wide range of basically artillery rounds that have to be supplied. And here we have our little friend.
Hello.
And it's the first time actually they come and visit us.
Not now, not now.
In any case, so back to, because they were doing a good job, then why starve them ammunition? You would support them as much as possible. So I don't believe it. I know that there was some talk about animosity and jealousy between various military groups, but that is also common. But, you know, leaders like Gerasimov or what's his name, Surovikin should have resolved it a long time if there was any animosity between various sections. They were also doing such a good work that you could have considered them as the heroes of Russia and could have given them all medals. So, and the Russian people understood what they were doing and appreciating and were actually supporting them in that. So why would you starve them of ammunition?
That comes to my next question. How did the Russian people and the population and also the Wagner group, how did they respond to this attempt to take over the government?
Well, firstly, one has to go back on what did they do on Saturday or basically Friday evening. So after they occupied the headquarters of the Ministry of Defense in Rostov-on-Don, Prigozhin sent a column of troops to Moscow. I saw some videos about that. I saw a lot of trucks going, and I saw 2 lowbeds with tanks on them. And I believe I saw about 2 APCs that were driving on their own. So it's not a lot of armor that went with that. If, say, there were about 30 troops in each truck, and there were about 30 trucks that I can more or less count, and we have about 1,000 troops that were moving to Moscow. On the, I think it's the M4 they call it. And just remember that Rostov-on-Don is about 1,200 kilometers from Moscow itself.
That's very far.
Now, I don't agree with this description of being a coup d'etat. I know some people would describe it like that. If a soldier, an armed soldier, rebels, then you can call it a coup d'etat, but I don't believe in that. I don't have that form of definition. My definition of a coup d'etat is when an armed group of any sort tries to overthrow the leader of a country. And you don't do this type of thing from 1,200 kilometers away. So, but in any case,
wait. If
no,
okay.
Let me just finish. If you look back at on Saturday night or Saturday during the day and on Friday night, there were a number of videos coming out. And I believe, like I said, a lot of people didn't know what was happening. So, and they were considered as the heroes of Russia. So they were friendly, typical what you expect from any population. They didn't run away. They talked to them. And I believe also some of the soldiers, didn't know what they were really doing. Later on, we heard that some of the soldiers thought they're going to go be redeployed to Belgrade, because in Belgrade Oblast, a lot of transborder attacks were initiated by the Ukrainian forces. And it looks very much like basically the attempted coup that Erdogan in Turkey had to experience, where a number of those troops were instructed to do certain things, to block certain streets, and later when they talked to them, they didn't know what was going on. They thought they were doing something else instead of actually participating in the coup d'etat. So the population was quite jubilant about them, friendly, as typical what you would expect from soldiers, especially the Russians value their soldiers very high. So there was nothing weird about it, nothing to think about it. So.
You mentioned that you don't agree with the word coup d'etat. So what would you have called it, and why?
Yes. One has to, you can look at all the facts and so on that came made available. You can try to make sense out of it, but you cannot do that. In today's, especially in today's environment, there's a hell of a lot of fake news, propaganda, misdirections, psyops and stuff like that. So you cannot look at all the data and expect to make an informed view. You have to sit back and then look at the bigger picture and then try to fit in the data into the bigger picture. Now, I found also that a lot of the commentators, pro-Russians, tried to do that and came up with some ridiculous ideas, especially the idea of a coup d'etat. Yes, I know Putin described it like that, but that's a point for another debate, if you want to call it like that. Prigozhin, you have to look at it in the context of Prigozhin. Prigozhin has done this now for a long time. He's supposed to have been so-called supported by Putin. He has been tolerated a long time, and his rants and his public media exposures or whatever he said that were quite severe critics of the government. And when one has wondered why they tolerated that and why they allowed it. And because, well, we hear now that the NATO and America is constantly crossing the red lines of Russia and then nothing happens, well, you can say the same thing is happening here. He was basically transgressing the rules of the Russian army consistently and nothing happened. And now if that thing has happened and you think you are important as the Wagner group and have had such much success and so on, you're starting to get a big head of yours and become arrogant and demanding. And the stress that was the Prigozhin experience on was a significant contributor to his outbursts. But unfortunately, that's not the only thing. It's because of his outbursts, I believe, Putin or his military department leaders decided to consolidate all the private mercenary groups. And it is not only the Wagner group, there are several other private military groups that were operating on the front. And because of his outbursts, they decided, okay, they're going to handle it in a different way. And also by the constitution and the law of Russia, private military contractors like mercenaries are not allowed legally. So they decided to make it legally and force all contract military personnel to sign contracts with the Russian army and therefore fall under the command of the Russians and make it a lot more formal. And that would be the proper thing to do. Now, naturally, if you have a successful group or company or image, and please, you got to think about this. The Wagner Group has a huge PR campaign. They have made a full-time video about. They have excellent advertisements for recruitment and so on. They have several officers, and now with this small thing of being forced to sign contracts with the army. Basically, Prigozhin will lose a lot of his work that he has put into it, and he will lose control over the Wagner group, and he didn't like it. But instead of actually accepting the fate, which is the right thing, there was never any other option really available, accepting that and consider his
Position.
position as a hero of Russia, and all the admiration and all the support that he gets from the Russians, and then retire and then say, I've achieved something, he decided to rebel. And then he went on he decided to send his troop to do a so-called military coup. But I wouldn't really describe it like that, because there are three basic things you have to do. You have to, the garrison that usually protects the president, that is the one that you have to control. Then you have to control the president himself and capture him. And then the third thing, you have to get control out of the media, usually television station. Now, none of these things you can really do 1,200 kilometers away from your target. So it couldn't be a coup, and it couldn't be and Prigozhin never actually threatened Putin himself. He only he demanded the resignation of Sergei and Gerasimov. So even a mutiny is also something that goes against its leader. That I wouldn't classify it. So I would rather classify it as a armed insurrection on a smaller scale, happy inside the military, not against the president, but against the military leaders.
Okay.
So I can't agree with what the other one's assessments are.
Because it brings me to my next question. What was Putin's speech about, and what did Lukashenko offer Prigozhin? What was it? What deal did they make?
Well, firstly, Putin made that speech on Saturday morning, I believe. And the way that he talked about the coup d'etat, but you can see he was angry. Like, I've never seen him actually angry. And it seems to me he was fed out about Prigozhin. He knows what he has protected Prigozhin, allowed it, and showed patience and so on, and he felt that Prigozhin has exploited that patience of him. And you can say when he said you got a stab in the back. And I believe that is what's referring to all the stuff they have done to Wagner. I mean, all the ammunition, weaponry was supplied by the Russian army, not by Prigozhin himself. So it was a supported operation of the Russian army for the Wagner group. And without them, they would never achieve what they have achieved.
A mutual.
Yeah, so he was quite angry about this whole matter. Well, as Saturday actually, and one has to mention this as well, as the Saturday progressed, the column moved up, the M4, and they later on reached Voronezh.
Voronezh.
And they moved even further. And at the end of the day, they reached about a point that was said about 200 kilometers out from Moscow. So that's about the point where things changed.
So they never made it to Moscow?
No, that's where it changed. But there were some videos and accusations made that a number of helicopters tried to attack the column. Also, some of up to 10 helicopters were shot down. Now, I can't support that. I don't believe that any of these things have really happened, because it's difficult to verify. Some of the footage of firefighters extinguishing a helicopter crash, there was not many helicopter parts available, so that was a due bit. And, you know, it was a K-52 that was first shot down, alleged first shot down, and then there was a IL, I don't know the number. And but if you thought about, looking back about 2 or 3 months ago, there were about 4 aircrafts that were shot down over Russia. 2 helicopters and a bomber and a fighter aircraft. And looking at the composition, that was a fighter, a bomber, electronic warfare helicopter, and a single attack helicopter. And then everybody acknowledged that this grouping of 4 aircrafts were forming a unit, an attack unit. So why would, in this case, attack only by 1 helicopter, especially if you know that the troops have man pads and so on, can shoot it down. But then also the accusation was that these helicopters were shot down by the Strela anti-aircraft or defense system, But I didn't see any of those vehicles in the column that was moving to Moscow. And also, one aircraft was shown where it was defeating that Strela air defense system and evading it, and successfully. Now, why I'm also doing this is because as the situation developed, we was hearing that Lukashenko from Belarus was in contact with Prigozhin. Apparently, they were knowing each other for a long time, like 2006 or something like that. And Prigozhin only picked up his telephone. Now, I think Putin instructed Lukashenko to contact Prigozhin and see whether they can make any type of agreement where there is no bloodshed of Russian soldiers or Russian civilians or infrastructure of any of that sort. And at the end of the day, they agreed. And Prigozhin, from his side, instructed his column to stop and return to Rostock. He withdrew his troops from Rostock-on-Don, and he was sort of then in agreement, banished to Belarus in exile. Putin made another declaration that all these troops that took part in mutiny or uprising, they would get amnesty. And all the troops, and there are significant numbers who didn't join the uprising, will be able to sign contracts with the regular army and be integrated in that. It's a little bit unclear whether the guys that actually took part, whether they also will become part of the Russian military. I'm not sure about that. That information is a little bit scarce. But in any case, Putin agreed to this settlement, and I don't believe he would have done that if the helicopters have been shot down, or if it did happen, then there might have been a single helicopter shot down. And I saw that some of the column vehicles in the column were actually bombarded and destroyed and burning. So one could make a story up that a local commander tried to be rogue, instructed one of his helicopters to attack the column, shot down or destroyed the vehicle. The guys who were actually in the column decided, hey, they have to defend themselves, and use the manpad or something else to shoot down that helicopter. So you could argue that in terms of self-defense, they might have reacted. I don't think they would have gone on the offense and first shoot down the helicopters, and then other helicopters would come and then do the damage, because then it would have resulted in a huge battle and the Russian lives would be lost. So I think one of the vehicles of the column was first destroyed and then the helicopter. And that's about the maximum casualty that I would accept at any explanation, unless proven facts are given to me. And based on that, and Putin's patient, remember that fighter aircraft in Syria was shot down by the Turkish, and everybody was calling for revenge, and Putin did nothing. Well, he was patient, and he did punish Turkey in terms of economic terms later on, which was sort of hush-hush. So if he didn't watch out for that, you wouldn't have seen that Putin has retaliated. And but in the end of the day, Turkey and Erdogan are big on the side of Russia, so that paid off. So in this case, Putin also mobilized or instructed his military and his police, but he never told us what they had to do. So there were never a build-up of any Russian forces moving to intercept this column. So Putin never basically intended to fight or whatever, and he was looking for a diplomatic or political solution to the whole matter, which he successfully did. Because at the end of Saturday afternoon, the whole matter was over. Crisis avoided.
It sounds like Putin made a bunch of really good decisions, considering that he got rid of hot-headed Prigozhin, he integrated the remaining troops into the army. Essentially, the troops that did join the so-called mutiny were exiled now, and then also Yeah, there was no bloodshed.
Yes,
So
that is important because at the end of the day, Prigozhin now has made several other statements and said no persons were killed on the ground. He didn't say air, he only said ground. So we're not sure about that helicopter yet. My personally belief is that one helicopter was shot down, but only after, and it's the defense of the column and not on an offense by the column, but a defense. Putin, you're going to have to divide the whole matter into the Russian population to three groups, distinct groups, which I have explained before. The one you have the Western orientated Russians, and forget about them. They're all the woke people. They don't care. Then you have the moderates. Those are the Putin supporters. And then you have the more aggressive right people. Now, when I talk about the right conservative, I don't talk about in terms of politics per se, which might be a part of their attitude, but those are the guys that demand action. They are unhappy with Putin because of his slow movement in the SMO. He's always calculated thoughts and plans that Putin does bring into, and they are not agree. They want to go storm like a bull forward. They want this battle at the front to be escalated and force the Russians to start the offense and overrun the Ukrainians and problem solved. You know, that type of thing. So they are actually very unhappy with the strategy of Putin. And what I was thinking is that Prigozhin didn't do this on his own, and he planned it for a couple of weeks. And I think it started off when the contracts were forced to be signed. Now, I believe it's about 2 weeks ago. So, being Prigozhin and being the big mouth that he is, and he has talked to other Russian commanders, and he found some support under their name because they also they are frustrated, they are impatient, they want to go and finally do the battle and get it over with. So they expressed their view. He thought he could count on their support in that respect. But again, being the Russian culture and the Russian spirit and the soul and so on, they were all patriotics. And when it came for Prigozhin to start this action, he found out that none of these guys were prepared to do it in public and support him. So everybody actually was against him because they believe and they supported Putin in that respect. And that is why the whole matter failed. I think Prigozhin wanted some of the other military commanders to also speak out, support him in expulsion or designation of Sogoy and Gerasimov, but that didn't happen. And then on Saturday, that's also believed is that why the whole matter was quickly solved. Because at the end of the day, it's ridiculous to assume that Prigozhin with 20,000 men, if everybody support him, can overrun the Russian army and do a coup d'etat 1,200 kilometers away. So that's a little bit bad. So, but the general aspects, as it was happening, everybody was shaking their heads and, here comes it, and what's Putin going to do? And Putin is doing nothing.
Yeah,
you're looking for the troops that are moving up and the tank lines that are set up to stop the advancing convoy, and nothing happened. And then suddenly there was this agreement and everything. So you thought that it was bad for Putin, and Putin has lost a lot of face to his partners. But then you heard he phoned all the important leaders of the countries and explained what was happening and probably also what was his plans. That he's not going to be aggressive and he's not going to waste Russian blood and he's going to resolve it peacefully. So I think he found all the relevant, important people. And then, but naturally, these right aggressive people don't understand that. They want to go, but they don't always understand because they are emotionally. And when they are emotionally, they think radically and they make mistakes. Putin doesn't make mistakes. Well, he does make mistakes, but a lot less than what these guys would have done. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, Putin has actually gained a lot, politically wise, support wise, everything by his action. If he has destroyed military, the Wagner group, then he destroyed a group that was respected and appreciated for what they have done in Bakhmut, and he would have destroyed a lot of goodwill. It would have been a bad decision because blood was spilled. Not all of them were criminals, were a lot of volunteers, so those families would have made problems. And Putin said, no, why do that? Why play in the hands of the enemy? Why spill blood? Let's make peace. And that was always the philosophy of Putin. And if you look at all the things he has done, how long it took to even start this special SMO of 8 years, how much patience he had, I believe he got a lot of political kudos. No, I think he did the right thing. Nobody can dispute that. I don't know, it was a brilliant move. He stayed calm. He made a plan. He took the right decision. He didn't lose faith. He contacted his important friends and connections, so on, explained everything. And at the end of the day, the Wagner group was preserved. Maybe not as a unit, but maybe as a half-part unit, because I understand maybe like not everybody's going to be incorporated in the army. And there are still some Wagner soldiers in Africa and other places as well. So the institution, no, the company, yeah, the company may live on. So.
So Prigozhin is now exiled to Belarus. What do you think the future holds for him?
Well, again, the radical guys want DZ. They are, how long is Prigozhin going to live? Why is he still alive? No, when is he going to take it out? Well, Putin makes an agreement and he sticks to his agreement. So I think nothing will happen to Prigozhin unless there's a rogue element that goes against the wishes of Putin and takes him out. But I don't think, due to the culture of Russia, I don't think people will do that. One also have to think, you lived in a communist era where everybody was controlled. So the culture has developed that you do not go against the government. You do not go against authority. So and I think that culture still stays there. So nobody will touch Prigozhin. Prigozhin has a role to play, in my opinion. He has still some of the Wagner troops in Syria, I believe in Syria, but I'm not sure. But at least in Africa. And he will go there. And if you think, why was the Wagner group in any case created? It was created by the Secret Service. I think they call it group, whatever.
Or something.
How you express it. And to do military actions that the government of Russia cannot do. So I believe it will continue. Prigozhin will be live and let live, or something like that. How your saying goes? Yeah, live and let live. So he will go on and he will probably be used. I know there's some speculations that some of the troops have joined him or followed him to Belarus. And that there is a possibility of or preparation that he might attack Kiev from the Belarusian. But that's a debate for another video that we can follow.
Okay.
And we still need a lot of information before we can even talk about that.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens after this. Okay, any other comments?
No, actually, I was impressed. I was fearful at the beginning. I listened to a lot of comments. I found that a lot of comments were making rational conclusions without seeing the bigger picture. I don't agree with the Coup. I highly respect Putin more. And overall, it took, there was some talk that he was involved with the CIA and he wanted to, this is a CIA op and so on, or a psych op. I don't believe that.
Why not?
We don't live in a movie world. We live in a real world. And establishing and creating these types of operations is not a one-day operation. It takes you years to prepare and so on. And it doesn't even happen all the time. You know, like I said, a Tom Clancy type of book is a Tom Clancy book.
Yeah.
And people don't shoot 20 guys dead and don't run out of ammo, you know. You know, spy on spy, they don't have that much assassination of spies and so on. That's all ridiculous. But also, I know that Prigozhin has made a lot of statements regarding but the Ukrainians are winning and the Russians are not telling the whole truth and they have lost ground in this place and this place and this place, and all the Western propaganda. And then the Russian units in those places then made their own videos and showed them nothing was going on. So Prigozhin clearly lied about that. But if the guy is angry and if you say irrational things like that, it's not uncommon. It's especially, your mom actually said he forgot to take his pills, Something like that.
Shame, it is traumatic.
Yeah, and I think he saw some horrible things. He lost some good people and people that he knew. And war is hard. This is not a joke and so on. We're always talking about this as if for us, it's a different alternative reality. But for those people, it's a reality on the ground. So, no, I can't agree with the Western influence. What actually amazed me is the reaction of the West. It wasn't that gung-ho type of taking an opportunity that was presented to them. So, yes, the media tried to, but it only took 2 days. So, and if it was a show by the Russian command to bamboozle the West or confuse the West or whatever, it was only 2 days.
It's not
now, if it took a week, then you haven't had enough time to do your clandestine operation around this, take your eyes away from the real thing. But it was only 2 days.
Yeah, it's not long.
24 hours basically, effectively. So no, there is nothing conspiracy theory about this. There's nothing extra. What you see is what you get, basically. It is what you see, what you get.
Yeah.
There's nothing funny about this. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing theatrically about it. What you see is what you got.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Anything else?
No. Hopefully we can have some nice discussion about other stuff as well. So
yeah.
Maybe I should say bye when you want to say goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And if you like this video, please share and subscribe and tell your friends. Until next time, goodbye.
Cheers.